that it was no longer good enough for us to catch the people after they committed the acts, arrest them, and send them to jail, that we had to catch them before they acted and do everything we could to use the intelligence community and our law enforcement folks to catch these folks before they acted. This president has weakened our military, he has weakened our intelligence community, and we are less prepared today and more vulnerable than we've been at any time since right after September 11th, and these events around the world add to it. Remember, the Iran deal is going to give $150 billion to the Iranians. Don't think they're going to build highways with that, everybody. That money's going to go to Hezbollah and Hamas to create more unrest around the world and fund terror groups. This is a painfully naive president who is too impressed with himself and his own charm. He thinks he's going to charm everybody into doing what he wants, but as we look around the world, they see him as a laughingstock, and for good reason. And so we'll rebuild the military in my administration. We'll make sure that the Navy has 350 ships again. We'll make sure that the Air Force has 2,600 coded aircraft ready to go. We'll make sure that we never go underneath 185,000 active duty Marines and that we never go under 500,000 active duty soldiers in the Army. We will make sure of that. But lastly, before I take your questions, if we're going to do that, if we're going to ask the men and women who will fly those planes and sail those ships and move across territory defending us and put their lives on the line, then it's well overdue that we start keeping our promises to our veterans as well. The scandal in the VA is a disgrace. It's a disgrace, and it needs to be fixed. So I want to tell you two things about that. The first is this, that I'm not going to make veterans wait for the federal government to fix this problem. We made a promise to veterans. We've told them that we will care for them and their health care needs for the rest of their lives if they serve and put themselves in harm's way for our country. And in our administration, one of the first things we will do is to make sure that any veteran can take their veterans card and go to any doctor or any hospital anywhere in America and get health care when they need it. But quite frankly, that's not enough, because the VA system is a system we're saving. There is expertise in that VA system that the men and women who come back from war need. So it's not good enough just to abandon that system. We have to take care of our vets while we're fixing it, but we need to fix it. And the VA has become really just a large hospital system. And with all due respect to the generals and the admirals, current and retired, we don't need another general or admiral in charge of a hospital system. So when I'm president, I'm going to go to the finest CEO of the best hospital system in America and say to them, your country and its veterans need you for the next 2 years. Come work for me, sacrifice for them as they sacrificed for you, fix this hospital system and restore it to become the best care that can be provided to any Americans, because that's exactly what our veterans deserve, and that's what I'm going to do as President of the United States. And there's plenty of candidates who'll say plenty of things. So let me just back up what I just said by telling you what I've done as governor of New Jersey. You know, there's a program called Vets for Warriors. It's a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week hotline for veterans who are having mental health issues. And it's a unique program. We started it in New Jersey for the entire country out of Rutgers University Hospital in Newark, New Jersey. And the thing that makes it unique is when that vet who's having a mental health issue picks up that phone anytime, day or night, 7 days a week, the person who answers that phone on the other end is not just a mental health professional. It's a veteran. Because lots of our veterans aren't ready to talk to a mental health professional. They want to speak to someone who can relate to their experience. And so we started this program for the entire country, and we did it in partnership with the Department of Defense. It's one of the things I've done as governor that we're really proud of. Well, it's a really good program, so guess what happened? This spring, the Department of Defense said, we're not funding it anymore. told us in April or May that they were going to stop the funding in July. And so I knew this just wouldn't be acceptable to me or to others who really care about our vets. And we know what an epidemic we have of suicide among our veterans who come back from conflict with PTSD and other problems. And every time one of those vets commits suicide, it is a sin committed by this country against people who served it. And so I went to I have a Democratic legislature in New Jersey. Believe me, if you see me just kind of twitching every once in a while, you'll know why. But I went to the 2 Democratic leaders of our legislature and I told them about the problem. And I said, listen, it'll be $3.3 million for the next year to run this program for the entire country. I want us to put that in the budget. I want the people of New Jersey to pay for it because I know they care about vets as much or more than anybody else in this country. And I have to give those 2 guys credit. They stepped right up and said, Governor, you're right, let's do it. And so today, now we're in October. The federal government has been funding this for 3 months, but the people of the state of New Jersey have. So if a vet who's having those issues picks up that 800 number, they're not getting disconnected. They're connecting again with another veteran, and they're doing it at the expense of the taxpayers of New Jersey. But we're proud to do it because we stand for our veterans and what they believe in and what they've fought for, and we need the rest of the country to do exactly the same thing. We've also set up a model plan at our 3 major trauma centers in our state, similar to the one I'm proposing for the whole country. If any veteran is denied care at a VA institution in our state, and they come with their veterans card to any one of our 3 major trauma centers, one in the north, one in the central, one in the south, they are guaranteed, but a partnership between the state and those hospitals' philanthropic arms, that they will get the health care they need that day. Same day medical treatment for those veterans happens in New Jersey if they're ever denied it by the VA. And that's not only because of what state government our taxpayers are doing, but also because of the generous donors to those 3 hospitals who believe this is a priority. We're providing that in New Jersey. And lastly, for our vets who come home and who are deeply troubled and wind up homeless, that's another one of those sins that we can't let go unattended to. So we've had a homeless place for vets in the southern part of our state for years. We were closing a psychiatric hospital in the northern part of our state, and there were folks who wanted me to sell it. And there was a private drug and alcohol treatment center on that property that we were renting their facility to them from the state. I said, I don't want to do that. How about we set up something called Veterans Haven North, a place for homeless vets to go. And I went to that drug and alcohol treatment center and I said, listen, here's my deal. I will lower your rent to $1 a year if in return you will treat any of the homeless vets who come to Veterans Haven North who have drug and alcohol problems for free. And they're doing it. And in a great partnership with them, they're doing it. So now, whether you're in the northern part of the state or the southern part of our state, if you're a vet who's fallen on really hard times, and you find yourself homeless, you have a place to go to be kept warm, to be fed, to be cared for, and to get treatment if you need it for drug or alcohol problems so that we can help you get back up on your feet again, which is what every one of these vets wants to do. From the minute they come in, these vets are looking for when they can leave, when we give them the tools to deal with the problems in their lives that their service has helped to create. We're proud that we're doing that. So when I tell you that these are the things I plan to do as President of the United States, you don't have to take it on faith. You can watch what I've done for the last 6 years as governor of New Jersey for our veterans. If I'm going to ask more of our servicemen and women as President of the United States and Commander-in-Chief, which I will, then I better be prepared to take care of them when they come home, and I can guarantee you that's exactly what I'll do. That's my promise to the people of this country and to the men and women who serve in uniform, and we're going to keep that promise if I get to become president. So now we'll get to the fun part of the program. You get to ask me questions, I get to answer. There's only one rule in the Christie Tell It Like It Is town hall meetings. You raise your hand, I call on you. Do not yell out questions. I do not respond to yelled out questions. This is not because I'm governor of New Jersey or a candidate for president of the United States. It is because Mary Pat and I are the parents of 4. which means we have a very highly honed ability to ignore things that are yelled at us. So we're acting as parents, not as candidates or governors. So just raise your hand. You can ask me anything. As you know, when you came in tonight, no pre-screening, no writing down your questions beforehand, no getting them filtered by my staff. You raise your hand, you ask the question, I'll do my best I can to answer it, and that's the way we'll spend most of our time tonight. So we have microphones, too, that we'll pass around so everybody can hear you. You go to that gentleman all the way in the back there. And here comes your microphone. Yes, guy in the blue shirt. Or something, it's dark.
Yeah.
Can't quite tell with the lights and everything. Yep, now I see it, okay. Thank you, sir. Thanks for your service.
I understand that you want to help vets, but this whole country needs somebody to help with mental health. There is none of that going on. There's people on the streets that are struggling for their lives. It's not just about us. We fought for this country, and we believe that everything is relevant to taking care of people.
Sure. Let me tell you that one of the real focuses I've had as governor is to deal with folks who have drug and alcohol problems and mental illness. And we have spent a lot more money in our state over the course of the last 6 years to open up more facilities and to make this treatment more available to folks. And if you look at the recent tragedy in Oregon and previous mass shootings that have happened, the reason for those killings is that you had a disturbed, deeply disturbed person who took those acts. That's why in New Jersey, I've recommended to the legislature, and I did it a year ago, and I'm hoping that after Oregon, they'll finally act on it, that we make some changes to our mental health system to make sure that doctors have the ability to involuntarily commit people who are talking violently and have a mental health background, not only to protect us and the public from the type of mass shootings that happen in Oregon, but to protect them from themselves. Because most times those folks don't know any longer right from wrong. And we don't want them to take their own lives. And so we need to be more aggressive on providing mental health care in this country. And we need to understand that it's not just an issue of humanity. It's also an issue of public safety. And all of those things need to be addressed. And I will tell you, as governor, we found a way to do it. We're doing it better than it's ever been done before, and it can be done in the country that way too. And one of the ways is that for a lot of these folks, especially a lot of the folks who are victim to drug and alcohol abuse, we're throwing them all in jail. Doesn't make sense in my mind. The violent ones need to go to jail. We need to separate them from society. But nearly 50% of our federal prison population are nonviolent drug offenders. And so they go into jail, drugs get smuggled into jail, they stay addicted, they get released from prison, they come back out as addicts, they commit more crimes, and continue to have their lives go down a spiral. The way we're going to fund the mental health issue in the federal government is to spend less on putting people in jail who are not violent and taking that money and spending it on providing more mental health treatment and drug and alcohol treatment for those who have those diseases. That's the way we need to deal with this issue. You have a follow-up, I think. Let them get the microphone because I'm having trouble hearing you.
I think that our vigilance needs to be not just for terrorists, it's for people that are whacked out in their minds and don't have anywhere to turn.
Well, you and I are saying the same thing. And I will tell you that the number one responsibility of the President of the United States is to provide for the safety and security of the American people. And that just doesn't mean from foreign threats, it means from domestic ones as well. That's our job. The number one job. If the president doesn't do that well, there's little else they can count on being able to do. And if you doubt me, just remember what it was like immediately after September 11th. Remember how the economy ground to a halt. Remember how everyone was preoccupied with only one thing: their safety and security and the safety and security of their family. If you're preoccupied with that and believe the government can't protect you, then you take that into your own hands. And that takes time away from you doing your job, growing your business, sending your kids to get educated. All those things grind to a halt. And so safety and security of this country is the number one thing, and it's what this president has missed out on desperately. Yes, sir, right here. I'll give you mine. No, you got it? Go ahead. All right.
Thank you for coming.
They got it. You got it. It'll go down.
First of all, I'm a former resident of New Jersey for 55 years.
All right.
I've lived here for 11. Unfortunately, you weren't governor when I lived there, but I wish you had been.
Me too.
I probably wouldn't have moved. You really touched on a lot of the subjects I wanted to talk about. Basically, security and much of the 60-minute portion that you mentioned. And I'm fully in agreement with how you feel about Russia.
People can't, nobody can hear, and they're turning mine down as well.
Oh,
There you go.
Okay.
Now
Sorry.
Hey,
I
okay.
was just telling the governor that I fully agree with his assessment of what's going on in the Middle East and Syria, and how much of a threat that Russia and Putin actually is. You know, in history, we witnessed Khrushchev, Brezhnev, and even on the other party, you know, Kennedy was very tough with Khrushchev, and they backed down. I mean, this is the kind of time this is the time to be tough with Russia, and I fully support your. Hopefully, that you can, if you become president, hope you will, and take care of this situation. My other thought was, it's going to cost a lot of money to strengthen our military to get it back where it should be. You know, in order to do that, you're going to have to make a lot of cuts elsewhere. Yep. And in your state, I can see where you've done that. You've cut a lot of, and made a lot of hard decisions with pensions and tenure and that type of thing, and it's important. So, what are some of your plans to cut back to strengthen the military so that we can afford it?
Sure. Well, listen. The first thing you need to understand about where do you reduce spending someplace? It's like Willie Loman used to say when they asked him, "Why do you rob banks?" He said, "That's because that's where the money is." If you're going to look at where you're going to save money in the federal government, you have to look at where you spend money in the federal government. Do you know now, in this year's federal budget, 71% of all federal spending is on entitlements and debt service? 71%. It's on entitlements and debt service, everybody. Yet, you don't see anyone other than this campaign talking about entitlement reform. Go and go to every other candidate's website, all the other 14 that are still in the race. See if they've got anything on entitlement reform. I guarantee you they don't. They spend all their time talking about the 29%. Well, heck, you could eliminate the whole 29% and still not fix the problem. We got to go to where the money is and where we're spending the money. And that's why I'm the only candidate who's put out a detailed entitlement reform plan. It's 12 steps. Here's the great news. I'm not going to go over them with you tonight. You will absolutely fog over. But if you're having trouble sleeping tonight when you leave, go to chrischristie.com, and it's laid out there and how much each one of those steps would save over the course of the next 10 years. But here's the thing. We not only do this to be able to have some more money to spend on the military and other places, but we do it to save these programs. Harvard and Dartmouth just came out with a study 3 months ago saying that Social Security will be absolutely insolvent in 7 to 8 years. Not 78 years, everybody, 7 to 8 years. Why? A number of reasons, including the fact that the government has lied to you and stolen from you. You put that money in what's supposed to be a trust fund. Remember, Al Gore used to call it the lockbox. Right? Let me tell you what's in the lockbox. It's a stack of IOUs, everybody. They're spending your payroll taxes that you put in now, and they're spending it on other things, and they're giving you an IOU in return, and they're hoping they're going to be able to make it up by the time you go to collect. And so here are the two different ways you can go about fixing this. You either have to cut back on the benefits, or you have to increase the revenue. Now, let's talk about what I want to do. It's two pretty simple steps on Social Security. First one is to increase the retirement age. 2 years, but to phase it in over 25 years, which means it would go up 1 month a year, every year for 25 years. That means for those who are on Social Security now, it doesn't affect you at all. For those of you who are right on the edge of collecting, it would affect you a month to 2 or 3 months to when you'd be eligible. But what it would mean for our children and grandchildren is that it would acknowledge the simple fact that women now live to an average life expectancy in America of 83 years old, and men live to an average life expectancy of 79. Fact is, we're now living 15 to 20 years on average in retirement, if not more. And we're not acknowledging that that's a blessing. We're living longer, having a better quality of life. But these programs were designed when people died in their mid-60s. And we just can't continue to sustain those programs at that level. So for our kids and grandkids, this will really help to make the program more solvent. Secondly, Social Security needs to be there for those people who need it the most, and not for the people who don't. What do I mean by that? We need to means test Social Security, and here's how we do it. If you make $200,000 a year or more in retirement income after you stop working, that means you have $4 to $5 million saved. First thing I'll tell you is congratulations. Great job. You worked hard, raised a family, you got $4 or $5 million in the bank when you retire. Excellent work. I also say God bless America, because it's the only place in the world where you could actually done that and not have the government take all your money. But if you're making $200,000 a year or more in retirement income, you got $4 or $5 million in the bank, do you really need that $1,200 a month Social Security check? I mean, really going to change your life in any material way? I don't think so. And the fact is that it is going to make a huge difference for those folks who have worked hard, played by the rules, but don't have that kind of money upon retirement. And the promise we made to them on Social Security was that you would grow old with dignity, that you wouldn't have to choose between rent and heat and food. But the Social Security would be there to help you live out your years in dignity. Now, I know some people, I was in Bedford, and I had a guy at a town hall meeting say to me, I paid into it. I want my money back. I said, first off, are you going to make more than $200,000 a year in retirement income? And he said, hell no. And I said, well, you're getting your money then. So listen to what I'm saying to you. It's not going to affect you. But on the principle, let me tell you something. We often pay for things that we don't get money back on. Okay, so everybody in this room who owns a home buys homeowners insurance. And you pay that homeowners insurance through your mortgage payment or directly to the insurance company every month or every quarter or every year. And, you know, if you live in your home for 25 years and you never make a claim, everything goes great in the house, no claim on the insurance, and then you go to sell your house 25 years later, you go to the closing, do you invite the insurance company? Say them, hey, by the way, I've been a really good customer. I paid my premiums for 25 years. I never made a claim. I'd like some of that money back if you don't mind. After they get done laughing at you, the insurance company's going to say, no, you don't understand. What you got in return for those payments was the security of knowing that if something did happen, we were going to be there to give you the money to rebuild your home. Social Security's got to be seen the same way. That you go to bed every night knowing if we do our job responsibly, that if you play by the rules and pay into the system and you need that money, it's going to be there for you. If we don't make these changes, the money will not be there. And the only other alternative is what Hillary Clinton's going to propose, which is take the cap off the Social Security tax and tax everybody more on Social Security. Let me just ask you a basic question. Why would you give the people who lied to you and stole from you more money? Why would you say, oh, no, this time it's going to be different? This time they're going to keep that money in the lockbox. It's going to be there. They're not going to take it. You know full well this Congress, as soon as they have a tough decision to make about whether to cut a program or steal some money from Social Security, will steal the money from Social Security because they don't ever like to give you bad news. I'm the governor of New Jersey. I've been trained in giving bad news. That's part of my job. And so the bad news here is that we've run Social Security almost into the ground. The good news is with those two simple steps, we can save it. We can save it for people. But we got to be willing to tell each other the truth. And other politicians in this race will not tell you that because they're afraid it's going to upset you. They don't trust you, I do. I believe you're smart enough to know this is happening. You already know it. You need me to tell you that Social Security is going in the tank. You know it. I had a 23-year-old come up to me at a town hall meeting here and say, Governor, I'm glad you're talking about Social Security because I have to tell you, I'm 23 years old. I just got my first job. I see that Social Security tax are taken out every 2 weeks, and I'm convinced I'm a chump. It's never going to be there for me. We got to give him assurance that it will be there for him if he needs it. And these are the steps we need to take to do it. So that's the way you pay for it, and that's the way you also then make sure that those programs are there. And by the way, in the 12-point plan, it's not just Social Security. It's Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security Disability, which, by the way, next year is going to go bankrupt. And you know what the president's plan is? Take money from Social Security retirement and put it into disability. Exactly what I predicted to you they would do. When they see a pile of money and they have a hard decision to make, they say, the hell with the hard decision. Let me just steal some money from over here. Then I won't have to make the hard decision. We got to make some tough decisions, everybody. We need to do it for our children and grandchildren. And that's what we're going to do if I'm president. We're going to make those hard decisions. Yes, sir.
I think most.
Sure, just give it a second.
I think most of us would.
Turn it up, please. Come on, guys.
Hello. I think most of us would agree that states, probably 90% of what the federal government is doing now, should go back to the states. And I'm getting a little tired of the federal government blackmailing states, whether it's education or whatever. What will you do to make sure, and please tie in term limits, stuff like that?
Sure. Well, first off, I'm a governor, so I trust governors. And I trust the states to do the job better than the federal government can do most things. The federal government's got to provide for the national defense. There are things the federal government has to do and should do. But for instance, let's talk about Obamacare for a second. Now, the 10th Amendment to the Constitution says that any powers not enumerated in this document revert to the states. Could anyone please point me to the part of the Constitution that talks about health care? It's not in there, and that means it should be the state's responsibility. So if I were president, we would repeal Obamacare, and we would say to each one of the states in this country, you have a set period of time to come up with a health care approach for your state. That way you have the ability to make the decisions on what to do. Second, I'm really glad you brought up term limits because I've been talking about it all over New Hampshire. Here's what I don't get. I have term limits as governor of New Jersey, 2 terms. The President of the United States has term limits, 2 terms. We are dispensable, but the Congress is indispensable? Right? That's what they'd have you believe. They'd have you believe that they're indispensable. Oh, no, no, no. There's too much institutional knowledge here if we leave. Listen, given what they're doing, the country would be better off if they all went home and the building was empty. So I want to be very clear and direct about this. No member of Congress, House or Senate, should serve more than 12 years. That's it. 6 terms in the House, 2 terms in the Senate. If after 12 years you haven't gotten done what you wanted to get done, it's time to go home anyway. I mean, I got a guy in my state legislature who has been in the state legislature now for 42 years. Go home, man. Go home. 42 years? Are you kidding? You just, it cannot be that there's still more to do. More that I haven't gotten done on my list. How long is that list? 42 years? And this is what happens in Congress. They get all comfortable down there. They like being called congressman and senator. They like getting their special table at the special restaurant. They like being waited on hand and foot. It happens to all of them. And the only way we get them out is beat them, have them die, or they want to run for president of the United States. Right? And by the way, I put those in the order that I'd prefer them to happen. We don't need, so listen, but this is only going to come from you. Because why aren't there term limits in New Jersey for the legislature? Because the legislature decides who has term limits. They put them on the governor, right? Not on themselves. Why Congress? Why do we have term limits for the president, but not for Congress? Well, because Congress decides, unless we amend the Constitution to do it. This has to be an organic thing that comes from the states. The states have to say, you know what, we got term limits everywhere. Why don't we have term limits in Washington, D.C.? And as President of the United States, I'm going to tell all of them, they need to stay 12 years and they need to go. And that's it. And if we don't do that, we're getting the government we deserve. They've showed us when they stay there too long, they forget who they're working for. And by the way, this applies to our party too, just as much as the other. I mean, think about the last 7 years. The first 2 years, we had a Democratic president and all Democratic Congress. How'd that turn out? Not good. Then, after 2 years, we had a Democratic president, Republican House of Representatives, and a Democratic Senate. And they told us, you give us the House, boy, we're going to hold this president's feet to the fire. Well, that didn't work too well either. Then we turned to a Democratic president and an all-Republican Congress. And I went out there and worked last year for a bunch of these Senate candidates in our party to help them get elected, because they said, boy, you give us the whole Congress, then we're really going to be able to hold this president to account. Well, I don't know, man. I've been waiting 9 months. When's it going to happen exactly? You know, they say now, I love this, they go, well, here's the problem. You see, we only have 54 in the Senate, and with our filibuster rule, you know, we need 60. So if you get us 60, oh boy, we'll really not forget it, okay? With 54 votes, they can eliminate the filibuster, make it a majority rule, pass the bills that we need to get passed, put them on this president's desk, and then if he wants to veto them, let him show the American people who the obstructionist in Washington, D.C. is. Our Republican Congress better get back to work and get the job done they promised us they would do. And let me be really clear, in case I haven't been already. I've had a Democratic legislature my entire time as governor. Every day, every minute, every second of my governorship, I've had Democratic majorities in the state legislature. 24-16 in the Senate, 48-32 in the lower house. Not like I'm 1-2 votes away, everybody. They got big majorities. I've vetoed 400 bills from that legislature, the most of any governor in New Jersey history, and every one of those vetoes has been sustained, every one of them. And Americans for Tax Reform came out with a report last month that said that I have vetoed more tax increases than any governor in American history, and every one of those vetoes has been sustained. You need to show these guys you're willing to stand up to them. When you do, then they'll negotiate with you. Because we got to get things done. And that's what I've done in New Jersey. Stood up against tax increases, stood up against higher spending, but then we got to make agreements on certain things. I'll go in and I'll make a deal with them. That's what we need to do again, but only from a position of strength. Only when they know you'll veto the bill if you don't like it. You don't want to negotiate with me, I'll veto your bill and I'll sustain the veto. Every time. And they have tried, of the 400 bills I vetoed, they have now tried 52 times to override my veto. And all they had to do is convince 3 Republicans to vote the other way. They are 0 for 52. And that tells you 2 things. 1, that what I'm doing is right. And 2, that I know how to keep the Republican Party, the minority party in my state, together and united behind a certain set of ideas and principles. We need to have the same approach in Washington. So we're going to try to term limit them. But until we do, you're going to have a president who's going to tell them 2 things. 1, here's what I believe in. Get to work and get something done. And if you want to make a deal, I'm here to talk on something reasonable. If you want to try to shove things down my throat, I will shove them right back at you, and I will keep my vetoes sustained, because that's what the power of the presidency or governorship means. Those are the things we need to do in Washington. Yes, sir.
Thanks for covering, Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming, Governor.
Thank you for coming.
Your last talk about Congress prompts me to ask a question. From the first George Bush, who said, "Read my lips, no new taxes," to the current president we have in the White House now, promising the most transparent administration ever and closing Gitmo in 6 months. People seem to say a lot of things to get elected, and then once they get to Washington, not only does it not happen, but sometimes the opposite happens. How would you be different, and why do you think that is?
You know, it's given the lead up to your question, it's kind of hard, right? That's almost like, when did you stop beating your wife? You know, it's like it's a tough question to answer. But I will just tell you, the only thing I can tell you is look at what I've done. Look at what I've done. If you look at what I've done over the course of the last 6 years, and I want to make sure you understand, I'm in really hostile territory, okay? New Jersey, we have 750,000 more Democrats than Republicans. I've got those huge minorities in the Senate and the lower house in our legislature. And I've got folks who cover me who are in the most aggressive liberal media market in the country, in New York City and Philadelphia. So every day I'm tested. They push me every day. They say awful things about me in the newspaper. I get on network television all the time because I live there and I tend to make a bit of a splash every once in a while. And the fact is that I haven't given in. And sometimes it means my poll numbers are in the mid-70s in New Jersey, and sometimes it means they're in the 40s. Depends on the subject and the day. I don't care. Poll numbers are only relevant when you want to try to use that popularity to get something done. They're not to be framed and put on the wall and admired. Oh, look at my, right after Hurricane Sandy, my poll numbers were in the mid-70s. That's wonderful. But you use that capital then to get things done. So I would just say to you that probably, maybe with the exception of California, the most hostile place for a Republican in America. And yet, I don't give in. I will compromise when compromise is called for. But I will not give in on my core principles, which is why I haven't raised taxes, which is why spending is down in New Jersey $2 billion from when I started till today, down $2 billion. That's not easy to do, but we did it because that's what I said I would do. We capped property taxes. We reformed the pension and benefit system. We reformed teacher tenure so that now if a teacher gets one failing evaluation or 2 years in a row of a below average evaluation, they can lose their tenure. That's a significant thing to get done in the face of one of the most powerful teachers unions in the country. So I think you look at the record and you're going to want somebody in the White House who has two attitudes. One, that they're tough enough to take the heat. They've been tested. And let me tell you, when we get to Boulder, Colorado, the end of October, and you see all of us standing on stage again, I want you to look at every one of us and ask yourself this question. Who's been the most tested person on that stage? And you look at some of the stuff that's happened to me over the last 6 years, man, I have been tested. And that's what you want in the Oval Office. Somebody who's been tested and is still upright, still putting one foot in front of the other, still getting out of bed in the morning, not in the fetal position, but in the fighting position. And the second thing is, you want to see someone who actually knows how to work with the other side and get things done. We cannot any longer ignore the idea that everyone's got to try to get a piece of the action here in terms of working together. And I don't have any choice but to do that because, man, if I didn't work with Democrats in New Jersey, I'd be sitting in my office all by myself all day and not getting anything done. It doesn't mean, compromise does not mean capitulation. Never means that with me. But we got to also be willing to talk to each other. That's the only way government's going to work again. And if you want to end gridlock in Washington, D.C., send someone down there who knows how to be tough and knows how to make a deal. Both. And knows how to do that in the government. Because, when you're a CEO of a company, it's great experience, but if someone does something you don't like, you fire them. If the Speaker of the House doesn't post a bill I want, I can't fire him as president. Can't fire the Senate Majority Leader. I might like to, but I can't. It's a different experience. You need to know how to work this, the system that our founders set up. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. And that's the only assurance I can give you. Otherwise, all I'm doing is giving you everything else everybody else said, like read my lips and, you know, all the rest that you could put out there. It's why people are cynical about politics. But here's the great thing about New Hampshire. As cynical as this government has forced us to be, you still showed up tonight. Right? You showed up tonight, and all of you showed up tonight, which tells me that just in the back of your mind, there still exists a little bit of hope. A little bit of hope, just a little, not a lot. I know this lady over here's got no hope left. She's just looking at me, shaking her head, going, "Are you kidding me? No chance, brother, no hope." Except for her, all of you have a little bit of hope in the back of your mind that somebody could actually make a difference. That's why you're here, and that's why you're listening. So that's the assurance I can give you. So right there.
First of all, Governor, I'd like to say welcome to Raymond, New Hampshire. We're tickled pink that you're here.
I'm happy to be here.
Number two, I understand you're not a bad guy because you're not a Yankee fan.
I am not. Listen,
I
Jack.
think that deserves some applause. He's not a Yankee fan.
Jack, just to be clear now, I'm a New York Mets fan. You know what that means? Except for that little dust-up we had in 1986. Except for that, I mean, it wasn't our fault. It was actually yours.
If we didn't have a bow-legged first baseman, you wouldn't be
If you didn't have a bow-legged
speaking
first
now.
baseman or a manager who brought the wrong pitchers in, you would have been fine. So here's the thing. But the thing that gives me a kinship with Red Sox fans is we have a common enemy. We have a common enemy.
The evil empire.
The evil empire, the New York Yankees, who lost last night.
Hey!
What a joyful moment. I will tell you. I watched it. My wife wanted to know, like, you don't root for the Yankees. What are you doing watching this game? I said, I'm just watching to see them lose. And to tell you that I pollute my children, our son, who's a senior at Princeton University and on the baseball team there, I mean, when the last out was recorded,
Hooray!
my phone went off, and he's just, in all capital letters, he says, yes, they lost. So we're on board, baby. We're on the same
On the
team.
more serious question I have for you. I keep hearing the candidates out there telling me we need more boots on the ground to fight ISIS. Now, as the governor, if you become the president, you're going to have that on your plate. Now, more boots on the ground means more tours of duty. We don't have a draft. And how many tours of duty does a guy or a gal have to put in? How many of those folks do they have to kill before they don't have to go back into battle? And how you're going to get boots on the ground to fight ISIS if we don't have that type of situation? We get guys coming back with 3-4 tours of duty, and they're committing suicide and doing all sorts of other stupid stuff. Back in 1951, I volunteered to go back to Korea, but my commanding officer said, you're not going back because you won't come home. He wouldn't send me back, and he had the common sense to say, no, stupid, you were there for 11 months. That was enough. So how are we going to handle that? Boots on the ground, we don't have the boots to put on the ground. How are you going to do that, Mr. President?
Well, first of all, thank you for calling me Mr. President.
That's okay.
It's all right. So here,
You're not a Yankee fan, so it's okay.
darn right. So, a few things. First off, this president, as you know, has intentionally lowered the number of boots we have available. Okay? So first is, we do have people who want to re-enlist, new people who want to come in to bring the levels up much higher than they are now. But I understand exactly what your larger point is, which is if we're going to wind up deploying men and women all over the world, then we're going to need to ask the American people to make even a greater sacrifice. And so what I'd say to you is this. First off, I'm not one of the candidates who's saying that we need to have boots on the ground to defeat ISIS. So let me be clear about that. I would not take that off the table as an option. But I think the people in that region have to fight this fight. And I think that we should supply them with arms, training down to the battalion level. We should make sure that we give them the kind of intelligence they need to smartly fight the war, and we need to give them the kind of air cover they need to soften those targets.
Governor, I agree with you. That's the way to go.
Right? So to me, I want to be clear that I'm not a guy who's saying that we should do that, because we watched what happened in Iraq. And in that region, if we're seen as an occupying force, not a liberating force, we wind up creating a lot more problems than we solve. So that's the first thing we got to be careful about. But your second point, and I think the larger point is that I think we'd have more people who would want to join the military if they felt like they had a commander-in-chief who was going to support them. And I will tell you right now, we do not have a commander-in-chief who the men and women of the military in the main feel like supports them, understands their mission, and inspires them to go and fight for our country. The men and women in the military want a commander-in-chief who is both smart and strong. And right now, we got neither. And his conduct over the course of time has shown us that. And so I think part of the problem is to make sure that you don't just deploy forces every time somebody gets an itch. Because those are real flesh and blood sons and daughters of mothers and fathers in this country. And that's the most solemn responsibility you have. But also, we need to build up the equipment they have available to them and to build up their numbers in a way that's smart and responsible. We can do that. We've done it before. We can do it again. But it should be absolute last resort to put boots on the ground to fight ISIS. The Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Emiratis, and the Saudis all have skin in this game, and they should be putting their men and women on the front lines of this war, because if they don't get them, ISIS is coming to depose them. And so that's the way I would approach it. And I think that's the kind of approach that will be well received in that region and also be effective.
Governor, thank you very much for that answer. You almost had me on your team.
All right, I'm close. I'm close. Man, we're making progress. We are making progress. Yes, sir, right over here.
Very quickly, what's your strategy for winning the election if you're the nominee?
What's my strategy for winning the election if I'm the nominee? Here it is.
We don't have a majority necessarily. We don't necessarily have a majority of the people.
No, listen. As with all elections in the United States, independents will determine the election. They always do. Right? We have roughly equivalent number of Republicans and Democrats in the country, roughly. And then the independents, the unaffiliateds, are the ones, like many times determine our primary here in New Hampshire, because they come out and vote in our primary. They're going to determine it. Here's the way you win the election. Fact is that the American people, and this is getting more acute to me every day, understand that they need somebody from outside of Washington, D.C., and somebody who is going to be strong and tough and honest. And, you know, I just don't think that Hillary Clinton fills any of those four. Okay? She's not from outside Washington, D.C. She is Washington, D.C. She is the personification of Washington, D.C. She and her husband had free public housing for 8 years in Washington, and they want it back. That's the personification of Washington, D.C. Second, I don't see her as strong. When she had her time as Secretary of State, she could show her strength to the rest of the world. It began our decline in the world. Now, some may just blame that on her boss, but I'll tell you this. If your boss orders you to do something that you fundamentally think is not in the interest of the American people, then don't tell me you just do it. You get up and you quit. She didn't have the strength to quit, and she didn't have the strength to do the right thing, so she goes 0 for 2 on the strength meter. Tough. She's tough in some ways, but not in the ways that are going to really matter to the American people, because she did not stand up when she needed to stand up to this president and to leaders around the world. And honest, I don't think I even need to comment on that. This is a woman who's now standing there and throwing shots at the Republicans in the House of Representatives. When she still hasn't answered, why did she have a private email server in her basement? Why was she putting classified secret information through that email server where it could be accessed by anyone? Why did she order the deletion of emails? And why did she permit the mishandling of sensitive national security information by people in her employ? Until she answers those 4 questions, all of which are connected to her conduct as Secretary of State, and most particularly to what she did or did not do in relation to the attack in Benghazi, She can't complain about anybody, in my view. And the American people are letting her know very quickly and very clearly that they don't believe she's honest. So my strategy against Hillary Clinton is to be myself and to speak straight and honest and direct to the American people and to lay out a vision of why tomorrow can be better than yesterday. And if we do that, we're going to win this election. I have no doubt about it. And I will tell you this. Just think about this for a second. Again, look at that stage on October 28th. And decide for yourself, who do you want on the stage in October of 2016 prosecuting the case against Hillary Clinton on that stage? Do you want a former federal prosecutor who's going to be up there prosecuting the case and holding her feet to the fire? Or do you want to have some academic discussion? Or do you want to have, like, oldies night? Okay? I mean, I don't think we want to do that either. Remember something, everybody. Every election in American history is about tomorrow, not about yesterday. We start nominating yesterday candidates to fight about tomorrow, we're going to lose. This election is about tomorrow. Our party needs a new face. Our country needs a new face to take it in a new direction. And that's what I'll do, and that's how I'll win. Way back here, right? Did you still have a question? Yes, ma'am.
Hi. My question is really basically, you talk about security and safety for America. You talk about the military. What about those of us who proudly own guns legally?
Sure. For
What are
those
you
of
going to do for us?
Well, what I'm going to do for you is the same kind of thing that I've tried to do in New Jersey. Now, New Jersey has some of the worst gun laws in America, all of which were passed before I became governor. And so what have I done since I've been there? I've done since I've been there, and the head of our Pistol and Gun Society in New Jersey, who's our local state NRA equivalent, has said publicly that the Second Amendment wouldn't exist in New Jersey if it wasn't for Governor Christie. So they wanted to ban the .50 caliber rifle. I vetoed it. They wanted to reduce magazine size from 15 to 10. I vetoed it. They wanted to make a statewide ID card and system mandatory for everyone. I vetoed it. And now I've pardoned 5 individuals from out of state who legally owned guns in their state, traveled through New Jersey, were pulled over for a traffic infraction, and arrested and facing 5 years in New Jersey State Prison. And I've now pardoned all 5 of those people. Fact is, I have a prosecutor's mentality towards this, and that's this. Violence in America is caused by criminals, not by everyday folks who want to own their guns for self-defense, who want to own their guns for hunting, who want to collect them, or for any other reason that they want to own them. And we don't spend enough time prosecuting criminals. Criminals don't do background checks. They don't. They buy them on the black market, they chisel off the serial numbers, they use them and they dump them, and then they get another one. I prosecuted these cases in the cities in New Jersey for 7 years, and I prosecuted as many gun cases as any U.S. attorney in New Jersey history. And you know what we saw happen? Violent crime went down because we take criminals off the street. We don't need new laws in this country. We got more laws than we know what to do with in this area. What we need is an aggressive law enforcer as president, and have that president pick an aggressive law enforcing attorney general who's going to tell each one of the U.S. attorneys, and Tom's here tonight. He was the U.S. attorney in New Hampshire for all the years that I was the U.S. attorney in New Jersey, and he'll tell you that Attorney General Ashcroft made it very clear to us that it was a top priority of the administration to prosecute gun crime by criminals. And we did it. Every one of us did it, because that was the order that we got from the Attorney General and the President of the United States, and it was the right thing to do. And when I'm president, I'm going to pick an Attorney General who will conduct himself the same way John Ashcroft did, and I'm going to pick U.S. attorneys who make it their top priority to do that. If we do those things, then there won't be an assault on the rights of gun owners, because people will understand that it's the criminals who we should have the assault against, not lawful gun owners. And so I'm proud of my record in New Jersey. I'm not proud of the laws in my state, but don't confuse the two. Lots of history happened in New Jersey before I got there 6 years ago, and I have been holding back all of these gun grabbers at the gate for the last 6 years, and I will continue to do that to make sure that the Second Amendment is alive in New Jersey. And if I'm president, I'm going to make sure that the Second Amendment is treated with the same measure of respect that all the other amendments are treated as well. Yes, sir, with the visor or hat. Go ahead. Come on, guys.
Oh, hello.
There we go.
First of all, I want to thank all the veterans that are here because otherwise none of us would be probably.
Amen.
And thank you, Governor Christie, for being here.
Thank you.
I'm going to go foreign policy a little bit on this. We've been sending a lot of money overseas, and we got almost a $20 trillion debt. Would you stop that? Yes or no?
No, I wouldn't.
Why not?
I'll tell you why. I figured why was going to be the next question when I didn't agree with you. Listen, for America to project its influence around the world, and in recognition of the great wealth we do have in this country, one of the ways that we can help countries is to help give them economic aid so they can develop. Now, when I say no, it's because you asked your question in a really blanket way. Like, would you stop this or wouldn't you? Well, no, I wouldn't stop all of it. Would I stop some of it? Sure, I would. You know, the people who are doing the right thing, the people who are helping to defend freedom and liberty around the world should get our support. The people who are not part of that coalition should not. All right? And so, you know, so we shouldn't stop. Listen, we should never stop helping Israel. Right? Now, you know, and we got some folks in the Republican primary who have said that we should stop foreign aid to Israel. Senator Paul says we should stop foreign aid to Israel. I'm sorry, Israel is an oasis of democracy in an absolute ocean of tyranny and terrorism.
I'm talking about Saudi Arabia and North Korea. Why are we giving them money?
Well, listen, if we're giving North Korea money, that'll end real quick. We're not giving North Korea anything. And listen, there needs to be a simple test for the rest of the folks. Are you with us or against us? I mean, I'm not going to be the kind of president who tries to convince you that I always have to be the smartest guy in the room. In fact, I shouldn't be. President shouldn't be the smartest guy in the room. You should have men and women around you even smarter than you that can challenge you, question you, and make sure that the decisions you're making are the right ones. But I will never hesitate to do things that make sense. I'm a decider. That's what I'm best at. I don't shy away from making decisions. I don't wring my hands. I don't get all nervous and shaky. And I don't keep looking in my rearview mirror after I make decisions. And so it'll be a very simple test because I'm a simple and direct guy. And it is, are you with us or are you against us? If you're with us, we're willing to help you. And if you're against us, you're on your own. And that's the way we should make these judgments.
Thank you, Governor, for taking my question.
You're welcome, sir.
I'm currently a freshman at Daniel Webster College down in
All right.
Nashua, and I'm majoring in Homeland Security.
All right.
I just want to know, what are your views on Homeland Security? Does it need to be strengthened? Does it need to be lowered? Your thoughts?
Needs to be strengthened. And if you had the opportunity to watch the first debate from Cleveland, you saw that Senator Paul and I had a rather spirited exchange regarding this issue. You know, the fact is that this is where folks in Washington, D.C. who've never done this really drive me crazy. Senator Paul said, I want more information from terrorists and less information from innocent people. Okay, I don't disagree with that. Here's my follow-up question, though. How do you know? They don't walk around with a sandwich board on saying, I'm a terrorist plotting to kill Americans. This is complicated stuff. We have to strengthen our national intelligence capability. We have to make sure that we know what they know before they act. And you need a president in the Oval Office who understands how to do that. I brought the first 2 major terrorism prosecutions in the country after September 11th. And the way we did it was by intervening and getting intelligence as these folks were plotting and planning their attacks. The first one wanted to sell shoulder-fired missiles to a Yemeni terrorist group to shoot commercial airliners out of the sky at Newark Airport. We intervened, and when the first missile was being delivered to him in Baltimore, our FBI charged in, took the missile, and took him, and he's in jail for 50 years now, and given that he was in his 60s when we sentenced him, I don't think we're going to worry about him anymore. Second one was the planned attack against our servicemen and women at Fort Dix. where you had 6 American self-radicalized terrorists, Islamic terrorists, who were plotting and planning to attack Fort Dix. We got wind of the attack. We used our intelligence capability to intervene. And the night that they were buying their automatic weapons to then execute the attack on Fort Dix, we captured them, we arrested them, we prosecuted, and we sent them to jail. That is the only way to win the war on terrorism now. It has to be won through intelligence, both home and around the world. And so we need to do those things. And secondly, on immigration issues, we need to keep track of the people who are coming in here on visas. Now, I said something about this a few weeks ago here in New Hampshire. It got a lot of attention from the press and a lot of fun times for me when I said that if Federal Express can track a package from the time it leaves your door till the time it's delivered, there's no reason that we can't track people who come into this country. So what's the media do with that? They say, Christie wants to track immigrants like packages. I had a reporter ask me if I wanted to put a barcode on everybody who came into the country. No. This is called, in the English language, an analogy. What I'm saying is, if the technology exists to do that, the technology exists to do this. I had a CNN reporter who actually looked at me in the eye and said, Governor, is your plan to put chips in people's bodies when they come to the country? I'm like, no, that's not my plan. You already have 10 chips. They're right here. Right? The human fingerprint is unique to every human being. If I'm president, we're going to have a system where every person who comes in here on a visa, tourist visa, student visa, work visa, gives a thumbprint. That thumbprint goes in a database. And when you have to access certain services, rent a car, go through the whole list of things you need to do, you need to give that thumbprint. And if it turns up that you come up on the database as having overstayed your welcome, we're going to tap you on the shoulder and say, it's time to go home. Thanks for coming. It's like if you all invite somebody for Thanksgiving, right? And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, you walk upstairs, they're still there. Like, hey, man, I invited you for Thanksgiving, not for Christmas. They're like, well, we really like it here. Well, I'm sure you do. But you're invited for a certain period of time. That's a national security issue, too. Because, you know, a lot of those folks that were over here on expired visas. And we can't have that. So I think we need to take a much more aggressive posture on this. We can protect your civil liberties. Believe me, the NSA was not reading your email. And they weren't going through your phone bills. You know what they were doing? They were taking phone numbers, all the phone calls that are made and received. They were putting them in a database. And if you had a phone number on your bill that matched up with a known foreign terrorist, then they were going to court to get a warrant to search your phone bill. Nobody was searching your phone bill without a warrant. It was absolutely made up. And yet the Congress has taken away our ability to do this now, because we have folks like Senator Paul who want to make a statement and then cut his speech on the floor of the Senate hours after it's made, put it on the internet to try to raise money. It's not what our national security should be used for. So I will protect civil liberties. I'll act within the Constitution. And by the way, if there's somebody in our administration who acts outside the law, they'll be prosecuted. But we need to support our intelligence officers. They're doing a dangerous job in a dirty world. And we need to support them so we have the information we need to protect each and every one of you. I said this and got some reaction to it, but I absolutely believe it. You cannot practice your civil liberties from a coffin, everybody. We need to have our priorities ordered in this country, and the first priority of the American president is within the Constitution to protect the safety and security of the American people. If you have a former federal prosecutor sitting behind the desk in the Oval Office, you can be sure no one's going to throw the high hard one by me on these things. I've done them. And I'll know what's right and what's wrong, and we'll do what's right, and we'll protect our country. That's how I feel about it. Yes, ma'am.
Would you take in refugees from Syria?
I'd probably take in some, but I'll tell you this. What I'd want to do first is to talk to all of our allies around the world and tell them they got to take some. And I'd go to Jordan and Lebanon, which have taken so many already, and see what we could do to help support them to take more. And that's going to mean money, because they don't have much. Jordan is not one of those Middle Eastern countries that has oil. So they don't have a lot of resources. We should go to King Abdullah, who's been incredibly generous already in taking these refugees, and see if he's willing to take more if we pay them. if we pay for them to take them. I think we should take every step we should not to bring any in. But I don't think, we should have our allies and we should support them financially to take more of them in. And if at the last resort we needed to take some, I would probably take some because I don't want to see people running for their lives and dying. I don't think that's what America stands for. And we saw that 4-year-old little boy drowned in the water running away from his homeland. That's not who we are and what we stand for. But we already give a lot. So it's time for us to go to our allies in the Middle East and say, this is your neighborhood, your problem. How many are you willing to take? And for the ones like Jordan that don't have a lot of, we should offer to support it. For the ones that do wealth, we say, this is your conscience with our allies. And ask them to take refugees? Hingo, the Egyptians, hey, would you take more of your allies in this business? That's why when I answered this question before about, you got to with you and who's against you. And the ones that are with you, we got to we need their help. We're going to be there for them when they need our help. Here in New Hampshire, that's the way I would deal with it.
We had a period of time where our borders were closed. Would you consider closing our borders?
Borders take no new people. Would not take. Continues to grow, needs more and more people to the country. The question is who, and from where, and in what numbers. And we can't even address that issue till we close our steps we need to take to secure the border. We can't even address both that way and so do on immigration, legal immigration. That's what we should do. It shouldn't be about economy and life, and that's the way I would do it.
I've read reports than Americans.
Listen.
What's wrong with that?
Well, of course there's something wrong with it, but that's why I say you're an employer and you hire someone who's here illegally, whatever you made off of that employee. And employers they to work. They won't be coming. They're part of the problem. It's not just people who are coming.
Perspective of voter fraud.
Democratic governor from the 1970s, one of the funniest guys in politics. The reason why people shouldn't have voter ID cards. I just voter ID card. And be able to prove that you are who you are when you go to the polls. I mean, I don't understand why this is a problem. The fact is that voting is a privilege. And it's a privilege that should be restricted to citizens of the United States to do once per election. Once per election. The other great saying in New Jersey is on election day, people say to each other, vote early and often. Voter fraud has become a joke, but it's not a joke. Because every time someone defrauds the voting system, it diminishes your vote. It diminishes the impact of your vote. And so, I'm absolutely for voter ID cards across the country. I think we need to do it. I think every state should do it because if you have nothing to hide, then what are you worried about having a card for? I have no problem carrying a card and showing it to my friendly poll worker when I go there so that they know who I am. There's no reason that you should have a problem with that, and I don't understand the argument against it. I really don't. All right, my folks say I can take one more question, which means I will take two. The reason for that is because I'm the boss, and I get to decide. Now, I've been having a lot of fun with this lady over here. And so, given that I've had so much fun with her, this is a very dangerous thing because she has been cranky tonight during all this, I want to tell you. So this is dangerous for me, but I'm going to court danger and call on you, young lady. What do we got?
Okay, I want to ask you, the government evidently doesn't know month by month that we've got a financial system. And what would you do if the government decided to shut down again? Like, in December, they're supposed to do this all over again.
It is the ultimate failure of the people in Congress. You get sent there to govern. That's your only job, is to govern, and then you close down the government. I mean, I don't think it's very complicated. Do your job. You got disagreements, work them out. I've had a Democratic legislature for 6 years. We have never once closed the government. Not once. We make accommodations with each other. And that's what they need to do down there. So the fact is that and listen, there are guys in this race who are all for closing down the government for every little thing. I'm not for it, everybody. That's what we're supposed to be there for, is to govern. Figure out a way to work out your problems. I've worked out problems with some of the most liberal Democrats in America in New Jersey. How is it that they go down there and they can't work it out? I'll tell you why I think they can't work it out. Because they don't want to. They don't want to. It's too damn hard. It's easy to stand up and give a speech and say, I'm for this and I'm not moving. Okay, great. Then what? Then what? Got 330 million people out here you're responsible for. Then what? And so the job of a president, and I will put, the Congress is very much to blame for this, but so's the president. Because the job of the president, if you're waiting for Congress to lead, everybody, let me end your suspense. It ain't ever going to happen. It's 535 individuals from 535 districts or states that all they care about, I'm telling you, when you list the priority order, is staying congressman or senator. That's priority number one, and they'll do anything to do that. So let's just understand and acknowledge that. Who has to be the adult in the room? The one person that all the American people elect. There's only one. And as governor of New Jersey, I'm the only person that all the people of New Jersey elect in state government. And so it's my job to be the adult in the room. It's my job to drag them in. I dragged them into special session to do things and made them stay over 4th of July weekend. They really loved me when I did that. I've forced them to do things that they had no interest in doing. Tell on you to the people in New Jersey, because I start going out there talking, people are going to listen. That's only the president can do that. Only the president can stand behind that podium with the seal of the presidency of the United States and have the authority to ask the American people to support him and to help him get this Congress in line. And so, to me, they do that, they have failed. They failed when they closed it in 2013. And if they do it again this fall, they have failed again. Do your job. Do your business the American people sent you there for. It's not a beauty pageant. It's not a vanity contest. It's work. Roll up your sleeves and get to work. That would be what I'd say to them. I show up for work every day, so should they. All right. Right there? Yes, sir? No, you're standing right next to him. There he is.
Governor Christie.
Yes, sir.
My name's Cameron.
Hey, Cameron.
And I am the New Hampshire State Director of an organization called the Campaign for Presidential Youth Council. We currently have a bill in Congress that has more than 30 co-sponsors from both parties. And it would create a 24-member council of young Americans from 16 to 24 who would cost little or no money to the taxpayers and be a voice for young Americans in the federal government. As president, would you support the creation of a federal youth council? And if not, what role do you see young Americans playing in your administration?
Sure, why not? I mean, the more we can do to encourage people to be interested in and participate in their government, the better off this country is going to be. Doesn't mean you have to be in government, but if you want to be able to be there, to have your voices heard, we need to encourage young people to get involved. I mean, that's the only way this country survives. And so, yeah, you're not going to cost me anything, and you're going to give me free advice. I count you in. You know? You're a low-cost item, and you might actually come up with a good idea. Hey, I'm with you. So, yeah, I would absolutely support that. I think it sounds like a very good idea. In fact, what I'd like you to do is give the specifics of the bill to members of my staff so I can read it and learn more about it. But based on what you told me, there's no reason not to support it. We should get more young people involved in their government so they stay with it for the rest of their lives as voters and activists and voices to make America a better place? That was a really short question, really short question. So there's a lady back there waving both arms. That's a very good strategy, by the way, always gets my attention. So I'll take one more from her.
Actually, it's a compliment to you.
Oh, how smart was I? How great was that, right? Right, Wayne? Sometimes you just get lucky, baby. Sometimes you just get lucky. Yes, ma'am.
Your organizational skills are outstanding as far as I'm concerned. We were down in Kentucky in Appalachia working on a charity for a week, and we came out of the mountains because there's no way to get any messages in or out. And we got a phone call that there was a hurricane coming, and we had to get back from Kentucky before the hurricane hit. And all the way home, we passed truck upon truck upon truck full of people that cut trees and telephone workers and the most enormous generators I've ever seen. And they were all coming to New Jersey and a few to Connecticut because Governor Christie had ordered them to come up on Monday, a week before the hurricane hit. And they were all happy to come. And we were thrilled. Every time we passed one, we gave them the thumbs up and a hoot and the horn. So thank you for being organized and caring about your community because we care about ours in New Hampshire. Thank you.
It was the most important moment of my professional life. And it'll be 3 years in a few weeks that Hurricane Sandy hit our state. And I can tell all of you that when you wake up that next morning and you sit around a table and your most trusted advisors say, okay, here's the report. We lost 365,000 homes in 24 hours. 365,000 homes in 24 hours. 75% of the state is without electricity. Every one of our major state highways is blocked. We have no operating water treatment plants and no operating wastewater treatment plants. In a state of 8.9 million people, only 51 gas stations are open and working. Every school in the state is closed. And people are frantic and scared and homeless. And you need to shelter them and feed them and take care of them until we can help them rebuild their lives. When that report ends, here's the bad moment. Everybody else keeps quiet, and they look at you and say, okay, Governor, what are we going to do? I will tell you, everybody, there's nothing in the new governor's manual to teach you how to do that. And that's the moment when you have to figure out how to lead. But you're right. For days and days before, when we knew it was coming, I called in every friendship I had around the country. I had traveled a lot around the country to help folks campaign for office, a lot of governors I had helped get elected. And I called all of them. I was texting all of them. Send, power workers. Send generators. And I have to tell you, the generosity of those folks and the American people were amazing. We had folks from down south who drove up in huge, huge RVs that were mobile kitchens. And they would just pull into a town, uninvited, into the center of town where there was enormous destruction, open up that RV, cooking 3 meals a day, like it was our not only duty, work for those folks. It was an amazing time in our lives, and there's probably who don't have their homes back. They're all rebuilt. Our beaches are replenished and dunes are built to protect now. And we still have more work to do because I won't be satisfied. Every person's back in their home. But there's no crisis that I've faced in my professional career that was bigger. And so whatever crisis they put on my desk as president, I'm not saying it won't be larger than the one I faced there, but everything I learned there will help me to be a better president. And that's why I'm much better prepared now than I was 4 years ago when a lot of other people wanted me to run. I'm ready to be president now. And thank you for noticing. I appreciate it. Let me just finish up by saying two things. First is thank you. I mean, it is great to be here tonight on a Wednesday night in New Hampshire in October, to have all of you willing to come out and listen and ask questions. It's part of what makes this process so great. And I get to know you and you get to know me a little bit better, and that's a good thing. And so I appreciate you taking the time to do it. Mary Pat and I say all the time, when we go home to New Jersey, people ask us all the time, what's it like to run for president in New Hampshire? And I say, listen, if you're cynical about politics, like I said to you, and let them see all of you, because you make an enormous difference. You make everybody believe that democracy can actually work because you take your responsibility here enormously seriously. And it's really uplifting to a candidate to have people show up and really care enough to listen. Second thing I'll tell you is, you go to my website, see all the different proposals. We've been more detailed than anybody. Please go and look at it. It'll teach you more about what a presidency of mine would look like. But as with Hurricane Sandy, there will be things that will happen when I'm president that we'll never be able to anticipate, that you couldn't possibly ask me about, because none of us could imagine it, but it'll happen. No one asked George W. Bush in 2000, what would you do if Islamic terrorists flew commercial jetliners into both towers of the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and were heading for the Capitol? What would you do? No one could have imagined it. He had to be ready. How do you know? See, the proposals are one thing, but how do you decide who to vote for? I would tell you the other thing you have to learn is, who is that person? Because when those decisions come across the desk, what matters is what's in here and in here. Not everything you put down on a piece of paper. So I'll end just by telling you who I am. We are all a product of our parents, right? Good and bad, right and wrong, we're a product of our parents. I have an Irish father, and I have a Sicilian mother. Now, for those of you who are chuckling, and I hear a few, I know you know what that means. In a household with an Irish father and a Sicilian mother, what that means is that at a very early age, I became expert at dispute resolution. This was a home where disputes were had frequently and loudly. And, my dad is a wonderful guy. He's 82 years old. He lives at the Jersey Shore. He's an Irishman. He is funny. He is friendly. If he were here tonight, he'd stay later than I would. He'd be hugging all of you, telling you embarrassing stories about me, and he would have a great time, come back to the hotel, call me, and tell me all the stories he told everybody, even though I lived them. He would repeat them to me. He's a wonderful guy. But I've always told my father this. In the automobile of life, my father was merely a passenger. Mom was the driver. In our house, Mom was judge, jury, and executioner, and she liked the last job the best. And she set the rules. And the biggest rule that Mom set in the house was no suffering in silence. Now, I suspect she established this as the #1 rule because she's the one who used it the most. Whenever she had any problem, Mom would be the one right out there. She would be telling you exactly what was on her mind, what was bothering her. And she insisted we do it. And it was a good rule in some respects. Even though when it got to be teenagers, we would be like, Mom, all right, enough already. We get it. I'm sorry. Great. Whatever I need to say, just to make it stop. And she would say, no, Christopher, you're going to listen to it now. I'm getting this off my chest. There will be no deathbed confessions in this family. You're going to hear it right now. And that's the way she conducted her life, her whole life. And it's the way she taught us to act. And so I said, I have an Irish father and I had a Sicilian mother because 11 years ago, my mom passed away. On Valentine's Day, of 2004, she was diagnosed with lung cancer. She was a lifetime smoker. And for any of you who've gone through this with family members or friends of yours, you know that disease can either be slow or it can be very aggressive. In my mom's case, it was very aggressive. And so I was U.S. attorney at the time. And by the time we got to the end of April of that same year, I was off at the U.S. Attorney's National Conference in San Diego. And I got a call from my younger brother. And he said to me, listen, Mom's taking a real turn for the worse. They put her back in the hospital, and the doctor said, if you ever want to talk to her again, you need to come home now. So I got in a red-eye flight. I flew home to New Jersey from San Diego, and got to the airport, drove to the hospital. And when I got to the hospital, they had started to give her morphine. And it was near the end of her life. They were trying to make her comfortable. And so she was kind of in and out of things. So I hadn't seen her for a week. So I was sitting next to the bed waiting for her to kind of wake up. And eventually she did. And it was typical of my mom. There was like no hello or how are you or no niceties at all. She looked at me and she said, "What day is it?" I said, "Well, hi, Mom. How are you? Good to see you. Flew across the country just to spend a little time with you. It's Friday." And she said, "What time is it?" I said, "It's 9:30 in the morning." She said, "Go to work." I said, "Mom, I just flew across the entire country to come and spend time with you. I'm taking the day off today. I'm going to spend it with you." And she said, "Christopher, it is a work day. Go to work." I said, "Mom, what are you, you're afraid of not getting your taxpayers' money's worth? Like, I'll make up the time. Don't worry about it. I want to stay here with you." And she leaned over and she grabbed my hand and she said to me, "Christopher, go to work. It's where you belong. There's nothing left unsaid between us." She was giving me permission to let her go. And beside the birth of our 4 children, it was the single most powerful moment of my life. My mom, who knew she was dying, was telling me that the way we lived our lives had paid off. There were no deathbed confessions to be had. Every grievance had been aired. And she knew that I loved her. And I knew that she loved me. And so I did as I was told. I got up and I kissed her on the forehead and I said, "Okay, Mom, I'm going to work." And she looked at me and she said, "Good boy." And I left the hospital room and I went to work. And later that afternoon, she went into a coma. And 3 days later, she died. And it was the last conversation we ever had. But I will tell you, I have absolutely no regret. Not one. And so I live my life this way because it's what she taught me. And she taught me that at the end of her life, that it was the right thing to do. And so now that Donald Trump's in the race, I'm actually the second most psychoanalyzed candidate in America. I used to be the first, I'm now the second. But when I say things like "get the hell off the beach," or I tell somebody to sit down and shut up, and it's all over because they should sit down and shut up. I mean, that's the only reason I said it. And it's all over national television, right? People say, "Why does he say that? Why does he do those things? Why does he say, well, he's angry? What's wrong with him?" No. They don't get it. You now know. You know why I'm that way. It's her. It's her. It's all her fault, man. This is the way she taught me to be, right? So this campaign and the way I've acted as governor and the way I acted as U.S. attorney and even that slogan is about her. And it is in some small way my tribute to her. Because if she were still here to see this circus that my life has become, I know she'd have lots to say. There's 2 things I know for sure she would say. First, she would say to me, "So, you're running for president of the United States, Mr. Big Shot. Don't try it with me, buddy. I changed your diaper. I know who you are. Don't try to act big with me." My mother would want me to keep my feet on the ground. She would want me not to change, and she would demand it. And then the second thing I know she'd say is, "Okay, if you're going to do this, if you're going to ask these people to give you the greatest amount of trust they can give to anybody outside their own family, to trust you enough to be the president of the United States, you better tell them everything. You better tell them exactly how you feel and how you think and what you're willing to do and what you're willing not to do. Because in a trusting relationship, that's what we do." And so that's what this campaign is all about, everybody. How am I going to do it? I'm president? Believe me. How am I going to do it? Oh, of course I am. And you anticipated my final conclusion, which is this: that all those proposals you can look at, and those are all things I'll need to persuade Congress to do and get you behind me and all the rest of it. But here are 4 things that I'm going to be completely in control of that I guarantee you I will do when I'm president, because it's all within my control. First thing is, you're never going to have to wonder what I'm thinking. You're going to hear it. And I will tell you, there will be times you're going to want to turn off the television set and go like, "Okay, man, enough. I get it. Sit down, keep quiet yourself, all right? We're done." But you're going to hear it. Second, you're never going to have to wonder how I'm feeling. As you probably can tell, I'm not a guy who hides my emotions very effectively. You're going to see how I feel and who I am, and that's important for you to know. Third, you're never, ever going to have to wonder what I'm willing to fight for. Because I will tell you, like I told you tonight, the things that I'm willing to fight for. And I'll continue to tell them because I'll be asking you to join the fight with me. And fourth, you're never going to have to wonder how hard I'm willing to fight for it. Because I've fought my whole life to get to this moment. Fought my whole life to be here. Because I didn't come from a family of wealth or influence. My dad worked in a Breyer's ice cream plant, put himself through college at night. My mother never went to college, worked her whole life. They were good, solid, middle-class folks who cared really deeply about giving their kids a better chance. One generation removed from the guy who was working on the floor of the Breyer's ice cream plant in Newark, New Jersey. His son's running for president of the United States. You're never going to have to wonder how hard I'm willing to fight because you'll get to see it. And so I can't tell you how much it means to me for you to give me the chance and listen. And that's all I can ask for. Although Jack, he's close. I may try to grab him if he hasn't left already. See if I can get him over the top because we got him real close. Jack, you're in danger, baby. Don't hide behind the cameras. I'm coming to get you. I want your support. I want your vote because I want to serve this country and I want to make it a great place for our children and our grandchildren, and we can. I would not trade positions with any person in the world, and our country should not trade positions with any other country in the world. This is still the greatest country in the world. Let's make it that way. Thank you all very much.
I spent 20 years trying to get out of this place. I was looking for something